China grew a tree that glows in the dark. No wires, no batteries, no plug, just a tree, and it glows all night on its own power. That sounds like science fiction. It is real. Right now, scientists in China are running two separate projects. Both make plants glow. One uses genes from fireflies. The other uses a special glowing powder. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how both methods work. You will know which plants glow the brightest. And you will know why your city might light its streets with trees instead of lamps one day. Before we go further, hit subscribe. This channel breaks down strange science and explains it in plain words. No jargon, just facts. Let's get into it. Think about the movie Avatar. Glowing forests, glowing flowers, a whole jungle that lights up at night. For years that was just a movie set. Now two real teams in China are chasing that exact look. They are not working together. They picked two totally different paths, and somehow both paths actually work. One path changes the plant's DNA. The other path leaves the DNA alone and injects a material instead. We are going to break down both, starting with the DNA one. This method comes from a company called Magic Pen Bio. It is based in Anhui Province in China. The man behind it is Dr. Li Renhan. He grew up watching fireflies in the countryside. That childhood memory became his life's work. Fireflies glow because of a chemical reaction. A molecule called luciferin gets broken down by an enzyme called luciferase. That reaction releases light. Mushrooms that glow use a similar trick. Plants do not do this naturally. They do not have the genes for it. So Li Renhan's team took the glowing genes from fireflies and from glowing fungi. They inserted those genes into plant DNA. The plant's own cells start making the glow chemicals. No batteries needed. The plant just needs water and normal fertilizer. The light comes from inside its own cells. Here is the tricky part nobody talks about. Just inserting a gene is not enough. The plant has to keep producing the glow chemicals without poisoning itself. The leftover waste from that chemical reaction can actually be toxic to the plant if it is not cleared out properly. And making light costs energy. Real energy. The plant's own fuel. Too much glow, and the plant stops growing. It can even die. So the real challenge is balance. Enough light to see. Not so much that the plant burns out. This is where it gets interesting. Magic Pen Bio uses an AI system called Agent VitaMind. Normal gene editing takes years of trial and error. Scientists guess where to insert a gene. They wait for the plant to grow. They check if it worked. If not, they start over. Agent VitaMind skips a lot of that guesswork. It runs simulations first. It predicts how the new genes will behave inside a specific plant. It finds the best insertion point before anyone touches a real seed. That is a huge time saver. It is the reason this company scaled up so fast. So how far did they actually get? As of this year, Magic Pen Bio has engineered more than 20 different plant species to glow. Orchids, sunflowers, chrysanthemums, petunias, lotuses, roses, and this is the part that surprised me. They also did it with poplar trees, big woody trees, not just small flowers. Think about what that means. A full-grown tree that glows on its own, not a houseplant. A tree big enough to shade a street and light it at the same time. Now, to be fair, this is not the very first glowing plant ever made. In 2024, a US company called Light Bio sold something called the firefly petunia. It used genes from glowing mushrooms. It became a hit with home gardeners. That project proved people actually want glowing plants in their homes. But Light Bio's plant was just one species with one color. Magic Pen Bio scaled that same basic idea across more than 20 species. Small flowers, big trees. That is the real leap forward here. Okay, that is method 1. Change the DNA. Grow a plant that glows forever on its own fuel. Now let's talk about method 2. This one does not touch the DNA at all. This method comes from a different team. Researchers at South China Agricultural University in Guangzhou. The lead scientist is a bioengineer named Shuting Liu. Her team published this work in the journal Matter in August last year. Here is the idea. Instead of changing genes, they physically inject a glowing material straight into a living plant's leaves. The material is called strontium aluminate. You already know this substance. It is the same glow-in-the-dark powder used in kids' toys and glow stickers. This is not bioluminescence like the firefly method. It is phosphorescence. The powder soaks up light energy from the sun or from a lamp. Then it slowly releases that stored energy as a glow over time. Charge it in daylight. It glows at night. Sounds simple, right? Inject glowing powder into a leaf. But here is the catch that stopped earlier attempts from working. Particle size matters. A lot. Make the particles too small and they slide through the plant easily but barely store any light. You get a dim, useless glow. Make the particles too big and they cannot travel through the plant's tissue at all. They clog up. They damage the cells. The plant gets hurt. Leo's team found the exact sweet spot. Particles about 7 micrometers wide. That is roughly the width of a single red blood cell. Small enough to move through the plant, big enough to actually store real light. Now here is the part that genuinely surprised the researchers. They expected leafy plants with airy open tissue to work best. Things like pothos or bok choy make sense on paper. More open space should mean easier travel for the particles. They were wrong. Succulents crushed every other plant type. One succulent in particular stood out, Echeveria mebina. Its leaves are dense and tightly packed. That should have been a disadvantage. Instead, it turned out to be perfect. Succulent leaves have a very even internal structure. Uniform channels running through the tissue, a tightly packed layer called the mesophyll. That structure acts like a natural wall that holds the glowing particles in place without hurting the plant's ability to photosynthesize. When researchers injected the particles, the results were almost instant. Within seconds, the glow spread evenly through the entire leaf. Not just at the injection point, the whole leaf lit up from the inside. Here is where this method beats the firefly method by a mile. Genetic glowing plants are stuck with one color, a soft green. That is just the natural color of the luciferin reaction. Scientists cannot easily change that, but strontium aluminate can be manufactured in different colors. So this team made succulents that glow green, red, blue, cyan, yellow, a literal rainbow of living plants. That is something the firefly method cannot do at all right now. Now let's talk price, because this next number is wild. Prepping one plant takes about 10 minutes of hands-on work. The material cost per plant is a little over 10 yuan. That converts to about $1.40. $1.40 to turn an ordinary succulent into a glowing lamp. Once it is charged in sunlight or under an LED, it glows brightly for up to 2 hours in total darkness. Talk is cheap though, so the researchers built proof. They lined up 56 treated succulents into a glowing wall. The light from that wall was strong enough that people could sit in a pitch-black room and actually read text off a page. 56 plants. Reading light. No electricity involved. Once they were charged, they even found they could shine UV light onto the leaves to temporarily write letters or patterns onto the glow. A plant that can display a message that opens the door to some strange new decor ideas. Now, injecting material into plants is not a brand new idea. Back in 2018, engineers at MIT ran a similar experiment on watercress. They embedded tiny particles into the plant and got it to glow for about 3.5 hours. But MIT's team went further than just light. They proved plants with embedded particles could act as sensors. Some detected explosive chemicals hidden in groundwater. Some changed to show when the plant needed water. Some even recorded images of their surroundings. Separately, researchers in Spain built plants that change color when infected by a specific virus. That lets farmers spot a disease before it wipes out a whole field. Put this all together, and glowing succulents look less like a novelty and more like the beginning of plants working as a living sensor network for cities. Now I want to slow down here, because this next part matters. Not everyone is convinced these glowing plants are as impressive as the demo videos make them look. People online who watched Magic Pen Bio's promotional footage pointed something out. In several clips, the glow looked strongest along the stems and the underside of leaves, not spread evenly across the whole plant. Critics said you basically need a very sensitive camera and a completely dark room to see it well at all. Some compared it to trying to light a city using nothing but glow-in-the-dark stickers. And honestly, the skeptics have a real point rooted in basic physics. A plant cannot create energy out of nothing. It has to make fuel through photosynthesis during the day. Then it burns that fuel at night to power the glow reaction. Every bit of light released costs the plant real stored energy. Push a plant to glow too brightly, and it will struggle to grow. It could even die from the strain. There is a hard ceiling on how bright a genetically modified glowing plant can ever get without hurting itself. That is exactly why the injected phosphor method has an advantage. It borrows its brightness from an external material instead of draining the plant's own fuel. Brighter glow. Shorter duration, different trade-off. So realistically, could cities actually be lit by glowing trees someday? Maybe eventually for soft ambient lighting, path markers, mood lighting in parks. Not full replacement for a bright streetlight, at least not yet. But there is a bigger question here. What happens to the wildlife around all this new light? Scientists already know that artificial light at night messes with insects. It throws off their navigation. It disrupts mating. It changes how predators hunt. Now picture glowing sunflowers and glowing trees planted across entire city parks. Will pollinators get drawn toward the glow and worn out chasing it? Will pest insects swarm toward these unnatural light sources in numbers they never would in the wild? There is already evidence that certain spiders use the natural bioluminescence of trapped fireflies to lure in more prey. A study published in 2025 documented exactly that behavior. Now imagine that same trick playing out on a massive scale with glowing plants scattered through entire neighborhoods. It could quietly tip the balance of who eats who in a local ecosystem. There is one more risk specific to the genetic method: pollen travels. If the glowing genes ever escaped into wild plant populations through cross-pollination, the results are unpredictable. A glowing weed might get eaten faster because it is easier for animals to spot. Or, the opposite could happen. The glow might scare off nighttime grazers and give that weed an unfair advantage over native plants. Nobody can say for certain which way it would go. That uncertainty alone is a serious reason regulators move slowly here, and regulators really do move slowly. Genetically modified plants fall under strict international rules. The main framework is called the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Most countries have signed on to it. Take Pakistan as one real-world example of how strict this gets. Before a glowing genetically modified plant could even be imported there, it has to pass through layer after layer of review. A local biosafety committee at the facility level, a technical advisory committee that studies the actual risk, then a national biosafety committee that holds final power to approve or reject it. Each stage can take months. Now compare that to the injected succulents. Because their DNA was never touched, they are not classified as genetically modified organisms at all. Strontium aluminate is already a widely approved commercial material. That means these glowing succulents can be traded and sold almost like any regular houseplant. No lengthy biosafety review required. That single difference is why the phosphor method could hit store shelves worldwide long before the genetically modified trees ever could. So why should any of this matter to you, beyond it just looking cool? Cities spend enormous amounts of money and electricity lighting streets and parks every single night. Even a small shift toward zero electricity ambient lighting could cut real carbon emissions over time. And glowing gardens are already pulling in crowds. When Magic Pen Bio released its glowing sunflowers to the public, they sold more than 10,000 units in a single week. That is not a lab curiosity. That is real consumer demand happening right now. Dr. Lee Renhan has actually said the goal out loud. He wants to build a real-life version of the glowing forests from Avatar. Not just for research, as an actual place people can walk through at night. These plants have already been shown off at major public venues. The Zhongguancun Forum in Beijing, Beijing Flower World, the Anhui Science and Technology Museum. Crowds show up specifically to see them glow. Think about what that could become. A glowing botanical park is not just pretty, it is a reason for people to leave their homes after dark. More foot traffic at night means more restaurants staying open later, more shops, more hotel bookings. City planners have a name for this. They call it the nighttime economy. A single glowing garden could end up doing more for local tourism than any regular park ever could. Let's put both methods side by side one more time before we close this out. The DNA method glows all night without ever needing to recharge, but the color is stuck at a soft green, and the whole process is slow and expensive to develop. It also has to survive months of government review before it can cross a border. The powder method takes 10 minutes to prepare and costs about $1.50, but the glow only lasts around 2 hours before it needs light again to recharge. Because it never touches DNA, it skips almost all of that regulatory delay. It can already be sold basically anywhere. One is long-term infrastructure. The other is a product you could realistically buy today. That is the real choice these two teams have made. So here is where things stand. One team is quietly rewriting plant DNA to build trees that glow forever on their own fuel. Another team is injecting ordinary succulents with a rainbow-colored powder that turns them into cheap rechargeable lamps. Neither one is ready to fully replace your streetlights yet, but both are further along than most people realize. If this kind of science interests you, subscribe for more videos like this one. Drop a comment and tell me which method you would rather have growing in your own backyard, the glowing tree or the rainbow succulent. I will see you in the next one.